All right, so maybe you love wine.
Doesn't everyone?
Maybe you've even daydreamed about working with those beautiful vineyards.
Who hasn't?
Well, today we're going to uncork the secrets of an awesome career, a viticulture advisor.
It's a cool job.
Now, you're probably thinking, oh, so I get to, sip wine all day and stroll through picturesque vineyards. But,
It's a bit more than that.
right, our expert's here to give us the real scoop, so let's dive in.
You got it. Think of it this way. A viticulture advisor, they're kind of like the doctor for grapevines, you know? But instead of a stethoscope, they've got soil testing kits and this crazy deep understanding of something called, what is it? Terroir, right?
Terroir. Okay, I gotta admit, that one's new to me. Could you break that down for us regular wine drinkers?
Sure, sure. Terroir, it's like the personality of the vineyard. Like all those things, the soil, the weather, even how the land lays, it all gets stirred together. And
Yeah.
that's what makes each wine taste unique.
So, like, a Chardonnay from, say, France would taste way different than one from California, even though it's the same grape.
Exactly. That's the terroir talking.
Wild. So viticulture advisor, they've got to be able to decode all that.
Yep. They have to figure out how everything's connected and then guide the vineyard owners on how to make the absolute best wine possible.
Talk about a dream job, right?
Some people, for sure.
So where does someone even begin to learn all this? I mean, is it something you're just, born with?
Well, little passion for wine doesn't hurt. But seriously, a solid education is key. We actually pulled some insights from RoleCatcher, that online platform.
Yeah, they're great.
They had a lot of good info on this career path. They said a bachelor's degree in viticulture, or maybe enology is a good place to start.
Enology. Enology.
Yeah.
Okay. So viticulture, that's the grape growing part, right? What's enology about?
Enology is all about the winemaking itself.
Uh-huh. Okay, got it. Grapes and then wine makes sense. But RoleCatcher, they said something else about real-world experience.
Anytime.
Like, it's not enough to just ace your exams.
Nope. It's about getting your hands dirty, literally. Internships at wineries, volunteering, even just hanging out at local vineyards and soaking it all in. That's huge EE.
So it's a mix of, book smarts and street smarts, but vineyard style.
You got it. And RoleCatcher, they actually said something really interesting. Having that practical experience, PLUS, some tech skills, that's a killer combo.
But wait, tech skills for growing grapes. Now that I've got to hear more about.
Yeah.
I get the whole sunshine and soil thing, but tech,
It's wild, right?
it sounds super interesting.
Technology is totally changing the game in viticulture. RoleCatcher had this really cool example of how they're even using AI now for vineyard analysis. Get this, drones with special sensors flying over the vines, collecting data on everything, plant health, soil moisture, you name it.
Okay, so we're not talking about old school farmers with clipboards anymore.
Not at all.
I like it.
And that's where the viticulture advisor really shines. They take all that data, the drone stuff, everything else, analyze it, and then boom, they can advise the owners on the best irrigation strategies, pest control. It's crazy precise.
So they're like, what, data detectives? Uncovering the hidden stories in the vineyard. That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And the tech doesn't stop there. RoleCatcher also talked about how things like those high-tech irrigation systems and even automated pruning tools, those are making vineyards way more efficient and sustainable too.
Okay, so we've got the science part down, the tech part, that's amazing. But what about the people skills? Because a viticulture advisor isn't just working with, plants all day, right? They're working with other people too, the owners, the workers.
Oh, absolutely.
So how important is that?
Huge. RoleCatcher really emphasized that strong communication skills are a must. You've got to be able to talk to everyone, vineyard owners, winemakers, even marketing people sometimes, breaking down these really complex things in a way that everyone understands.
So it's not enough to be a grape whisperer. You've got to be a people whisperer too.
Pretty much.
Now that is a unique skill set.
It takes a certain type of person for sure.
Definitely. Someone who isn't afraid to get their hands dirty, literally and figuratively. So what would you say, what are some of those key personality traits that a successful viticulture advisor needs?
Well, from my experience, and echoing what RoleCatcher found too, adaptability, being able to roll with the punches, that's huge. Remember, you're working with Mother Nature here.
And she does what she wants.
Exactly.
No kidding. You got to be ready for anything, right? Like a vine reaching for the trellis, finding its way.
Exactly. You could be out there knee-deep in mud after a storm, checking on the vines, and the next day you're in the lab analyzing, what's it called? Brix levels.
Yeah, Brix levels in the grapes.
Bricka levels. See, now there you go again with the fancy wine words.
Right. So
With Brix, fill us in. Basically, it's how much sugar is in the grapes. And that tells you how ripe they are. which translates to, well, how much alcohol could be in the wine later on.
Ah, so that's how they know when to pick them.
Yeah.
So it's not all just like swirling and sniffing and saying, ooh, this vintage is exquisite. There is some serious science involved.
Oh, for sure. And that ties into another big skill that RoleCatcher talked about, problem solving.
Right, because it's not always smooth sailing in the vineyard.
Definitely not. Remember those pests and diseases we mentioned earlier? Well, a viticulture advisor, they gotta know how to spot those problems, figure out how to handle them, and sometimes, make some tough calls about treatments and stuff.
So really, I is like being a grape doctor, like you were saying, diagnosing problems, coming up with the right medicine,
I told ya.
maybe even a little vine surgery if it comes down to it.
That's a good one. And just like a doctor, a good viticulture advisor, they're always learning, right?
Keeping up with the latest medical journals, wine journals.
Something like that. RoleCatcher really stressed that successful advisors, they're all about continuous learning. Conferences, industry magazines, even experimenting with new techniques out in the field.
I can see why. There's always something new happening. Different types of grapes, climate change, people wanting organic wines.
Yeah.
That's a lot to stay on top of.
You said it. But that's also what makes it so rewarding,
How so?
You're on the cutting edge, helping to invent the future of wine. How cool is that?
That's a pretty cool. And speaking of the future, what about this whole sustainability thing? I hear that word everywhere now, but what does it actually mean for vineyards?
It's thinking about the long game, How do we keep the vineyard and the environment around it healthy for, years and years?
Okay, so more than just one season's grapes.
Exactly. Less water usage, fewer pesticides, even thinking about, the carbon footprint of the whole operation.
It's like being eco-conscious, but for vineyards.
Yeah, like earth-friendly winemaking. And you know what? Consumers are really starting to care about that stuff. RoleCatcher found that a lot of job ads for viticulture advisors, they're putting sustainability right there in the description, like it's a requirement.
So it's not just a trend, it's like the future of the industry.
For sure.
Okay, but we got to be real for a sec. No job's perfect, right?
Sure.
We've talked about crazy weather, always having to learn new stuff, finding that balance between, science and nature. What would you say are some of the not-so-fun parts of being a viticulture advisor?
Well, the hours can be brutal, especially during harvest. You're working around the clock sometimes, no matter what. Mother Nature doesn't care about your weekend plans.
Yeah, I bet those are some early mornings and late nights, especially if you have to travel a lot for the job, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Depending on, how many clients you have, you could be covering a ton of ground, literally. Driving between vineyards, maybe even flying to different regions or even, different countries.
Whoa, so you could be working with vineyards all over the world.
It's possible. So, yeah, if you hate to travel, this might not be the job for you.
Got it. So we're seeing a theme here, right? Adaptability, flexibility, being okay with, a little chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Those are key to being a good viticulture advisor.
100%.
Okay, but let's say someone's listening to this and they are totally convinced. This is it. This is my dream career. What's the single most important piece of advice you'd give to someone just starting out?
Get out there and get your hands dirty. I mean it.
Literally.
Yes, book learning is important, but nothing beats real-world experience.
So, call up some local wineries, volunteer during harvest, maybe try making some homemade wine just to see how it's done.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to network. Go to wine tastings, those industry events, connect with people on LinkedIn, whatever it takes. You never know what connection might turn into a job.
It's all about building those relationships, right?
Exactly. And when you're finally ready to start sending out those resumes, that's where RoleCatcher comes in.
Oh, yeah. They had some great tips on their site.
They can help you make your resume really shine, highlight all your skills, even navigate those tricky online application systems.
Because in the digital age, you got to know how to stand out from the crowd, right? A love for Pinot Noir only gets you so far.
Sad but true.
But okay, let's say you've aced the resume, you've got the interview. What are some questions you should be ready for? How do you really WOW those potential employers? So you're in the interview, right? They're grilling you about your love of grapes.
Well, hopefully not literally grilling.
Right. But what are some curveball questions they might throw your way, and how do you knock those answers out of the park?
Okay, so imagine this. You're sitting across from a potential employer, and they ask, all right, tell me, how would you go about assessing the health of our vineyard? How do you answer that?
Oh, man, that's a big one.
Right. But here's the thing, don't overthink it. It's all about showing them you understand what it really takes to be a viticulture advisor. Like, you're not just reciting facts from a textbook.
Got it. So what would you say?
You could say something like, well, first, I listened to the vines.
Wait, the vines talk.
Not literally, haha, but you know what I mean. You're looking at the leaves, the way they're growing, any signs that something's off. It's like reading their body language.
Ah, I like that. So it's about observation, seeing what the vines are trying to tell you.
Exactly. But then you bring in the science. You could say, I'd want to take some soil samples, check the nutrient levels, see if anything's out of whack. And I'd also look at the recent weather patterns, the irrigation history, all that good stuff.
So you're showing them you can connect the dots, right?
Yep. You're looking at the whole picture, not just the individual parts. And here's a little bonus tip from RoleCatcher. Don't be afraid to tell a story. Like, instead of just saying you're a great problem solver.
Give them an example.
Exactly. You could talk about a time you identified a pest problem early on and what steps you took to stop it from becoming a disaster.
So, like, you were a vineyard hero. Saved the grapes from a aphid invasion.
Haha, something like that. A good story will make you way more memorable than just listing off skills.
For sure. People remember stories.
Oh, and here's another thing that RoleCatcher highlighted. Be ready to answer questions about how you communicate.
Right, because we talked about how important it is to explain those technical things, like, so someone who's not a viticulture nerd can understand it.
Exactly. So think about a time when you had to explain something kind of complicated, maybe a soil report or something, to someone who didn't know all the scientific jargon. How'd you make it clear for them?
That's a good one. Because it's not enough to just know a lot of stuff, right? You got to be able to share that knowledge with others.
Yeah.
It's like you're an educator almost, a translator between the sciencey side of things and the I don't know, the art of winemaking.
I love that. A translator between science and art. That's perfect. Because that's what a viticulture advisor really is.
So as we wrap up our deep dive here, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to remember about this career?
It's more than just a job, It's about passion. It's for the people who are truly connected to the land, who are fascinated by how things grow, and, of course, who appreciate a fantastic glass of wine.
Beautifully said. So if you're out there and you're feeling that pull towards the vineyards, don't ignore it. Go for it.
Cheers to that.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. If terroir is the personality of the vineyard, then what's the personality of a viticulture advisor? Something to ponder, right?
That's a good one. I'll be thinking about that myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of viticulture advising. Until next time, happy sipping.